Before we start this episode, a quick reminder that the Craft Brewers Conference in Indianapolis is just weeks away, and we're throwing a party with some beer industry friends. We're calling it the Beer Me 500. It's 6 to 10 p.m. on Tuesday, April 29th at the Hangar. That's just a few blocks away from the convention center. We'll have food and beer, racing and golf simulators, and more. It's invite only, so if you're a professional brewer, reach out to your rep at any of the party co-sponsors. Those include Prairie Malt, Hopsteiner, Deutsch, and Omega. And if you're a craft beer and brewing advertiser, just drop a line to Bryce on our team. I'll be there, of course. I look forward to sharing beers with you all. And now, on to the episode. It's episode 409 of the Craft Beer Brewing Podcast. I'm still in New Zealand, and joining me for this episode is Paweł Lewandowski, head brewer from Mount Brewing. Welcome to the podcast, Paweł.
Thank you for having me. It's absolutely a pleasure.
A Polish brewer brewing here in New Zealand. You've been here brewing for a number of years now. I think 8 or so, maybe more.
Probably around 10 years. It's coming to 10 years. So it's been a long journey.
You came here not expecting to stick around for as long as you did, and here you are.
Oh, yeah. Life is unpredictable. 10 years later, I'm still here. Even though I meant to be here only 1 year, but it's been a great journey.
Sure. Well, you make a New Zealand Pilsner that all of the brewers here that have mentioned and respect and love. And a couple nights ago, as we were drinking at the Free House in downtown Nelson, we got to talking about New Zealand Pilsner, drinking New Zealand Pilsners, and thought we need to do a podcast episode and talk about New Zealand Pilsner because you obviously have some phenomenal methods for making compelling beer. New Zealand Pilsner as a style, even as it's considered here in competition in New Zealand, has a very wide range. In fact, oddly enough, even within New Zealand Pilsner, it is acceptable to do in colder ale fermentation, and that's actually not uncommon. You make yours with a lager fermentation, and but at the same time, with the way that you all select hops using New Zealand hops in this kind of lager space, but also finding a way to balance some of the sharper, more mineral character of some of these hops with the sulfur component of that lager fermentation means that there's a technical balancing act to that. So, of course, we're going to talk to you about how you use New Zealand hops in lager, probably talk about how you use them in ales, pale ales as well. Just to get some perspective on that. We've talked a lot over the last couple of weeks with folks about the hops themselves, a lot of scientists and a lot of theory, and it's going to be fun to talk about the in practice, how you use them, and how you think about them as a New Zealand brewer. Before we do that, for years, G&D Chillers has chilled the beers you love, partnering with 3,000 plus brewers across North America and beyond. They're proud of the cool partnerships they've built over the past 30 years because brewing doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, and nor do they. They use quality components, expert craftsmanship, and constant innovation. With their 24/7 service and support, your brewery will never stop. Remote monitor your chiller for simple and fast access to all the information you need and gain peace of mind your operation is running smoothly. And brewers, what if your yeast could do more than just ferment? With Berkeley Yeast, it can. They bioengineer ordinary strains and make them extraordinary, enhancing the flavors you want and eliminating the ones you don't. Now, in addition to competitive pricing, they're offering free overnight shipping on 5+ barrel pitches. Try it out. If you don't love it, they'll happily refund you. So why settle for ordinary when you can brew with better yeast? Visit berkeleyyeast.com to learn more and start brewing with science on your side. Also, every beer menu could use a refresh button on the fruit flavors. That's why it's time to revisit Old Orchard's flavored craft juice concentrate blends, where the latest additions include fruit punch, guava, kiwi, and pomegranate. They aren't stopping there and welcome flavor suggestions from the brewing industry. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Paweł, give us your background. What got you into beer? What got you into brewing? What brought you here to New Zealand? And then tell us the story of Mount.
Well, basically, my background has nothing to do with the brewing, professional brewing. I never meant to be a brewer. It was my hobby back in Poland when I was a student, studying. Of course, you're short of money, a little bit on the budget, but you still want to enjoy good flavors of beverage, in this case beer. So I start hanging out with the people who brewing beer at home, and then they start sharing beer with me, and yeah, I really enjoy the flavors and the whole spectrum of beers you can try. Beside those you can find in the supermarket. So that was the huge impact on my love to the beer in the future. And then throughout my journey, I studied in Mexico, where I was hanging out with the brewers. Luckily. Went to Mexico for a student exchange program. I was studying their international business, so on top of doing my master finance in economics. In Mexico, I was studying international business in Monterrey, and then again, luckily, I started hanging out with some home brewers. They were sharing beers with me, and then I was talk about the beer, drink a beer, hanging out with amazing people. And after that, what shaped my future life, I decided to hitchhike to Costa Rica, basically. So that, like, all my life, I was thinking that my future is already defined. I was imagining myself coming back to Poland and working in a corporation, doing finance and all that stuff. But throughout my journey to Costa Rica, I met a lot of very inspiring people who changed their complete destiny, I believe, their life. They start doing the different things that they culture, their parents taught them to do. So I was thinking, oh, it's possible, like your 5 years of doing master in economy, finance, doesn't mean basically nothing. You can do whatever you want in your life. So after I came back to Poland, I promised my mom, because I wanted to give up basically on the last trade. On the last 6 months, wanted to give up my master, but my mom encouraged me to finish my master thesis just in case, to have like a little support in the future if something goes wrong. I finished my master thesis, and I wasn't ready to go back to work, to go to work. Many of my friends straight after university, they started their professional careers, and I decided I'm not ready. So I wanted to travel more. I moved to Indonesia for 1 year. I meant to be there 3 months, so you can already feel like I intend to stay in one place for a little bit longer than I meant to. Meant to be in Indonesia for 2 months, stay almost 1 year, and as you might know, like, there's no much beer available in Indonesia. So my quench thirst was quite arising, and I was like, oh my God, like I want to move to another country, but I would like to start doing what I like. And it turns that, like, I wanted to start career in brewing. So then opportunity to move to New Zealand happened on a work and holiday visa. So I applied for a work and holiday visa. I was one of 100 lucky applicants who got accepted. And then I had a few months to decide what I want to do, where I want to live. I sent like around 50 resumes around the country, and there was a couple of breweries accepted me. I looked at the map, and I was like, wow, Mount Maunganui is a pretty special place. It's a beautiful region, beautiful beach, very sunny weather most of the time. And I was like, okay, this is the place. So they accepted me. They didn't know anything about me, basically. So I guess that was a lot of trust, maybe believing in me, in what I wrote in the email. So a few months later, I landed in Auckland. That was 5th of December 2015, and 9th of December, I basically started working in a brewery as a brewery assistant. So that's, that was almost 10 years ago. And slowly but surely, I progressed through the different steps, different position in a brewery. I started basically from cleaning kegs, jumping, because in that time our brewhouse brewery system was quite manual, I would say, labor intense. Actually, I didn't mention that, but brewers at that time, when they saw me entering through the doorstep to the brewery, they was like, whoa, we are thinking that you're way smaller, and you guys might not see me, but I'm pretty tall. And definitely I'm not the smallest guy. And they said, how this guy is going to jump inside the kettle and scrap all that, stains and stuff like that. Beside that, I had to jump inside the fermenters basically and scrap the fermenters from inside before CAPing and stuff like that. So that was a journey, but I didn't complain, I didn't cry, and slowly I started progressing through brewer position, senior brewer. Then opportunity to stay longer happened. They offered me a work visa to stay a little bit longer with them. So I was like, well, 1 year in New Zealand is not that much, so I can stay another year. Then I got another visa extension. Then we were going through restructure in our brewery, where we got very fancy, nice, not very fancy, but good equipment. We team up with another New Zealand brewery called Funk Estate. So we joined the forces. We were brewing together and on completely new brew system. So that was like a huge step up for us. And then eventually we were going through the ownership changes. And then I was asked to be the head brewer because I've been brewing with them already, with Mom Brewing for 5.5, 6 years. So if they offer me that opportunity, that position, I said, okay, I'll take it. So yeah, by then I was like, I believe I was experienced brewer where I was already making my own beers, but it took me a lot of time and a lot of effort to actually get here. So yeah, it's been a long journey. My plans of going to Australia, live there, Japan, Canada, States, Argentina, unfortunately didn't happen. It might not happen, but who knows? Who knows?
Masters in international finance. We get a lot of engineers in the brewing business. You might be the first master of international finance.
Yeah, hopefully not the last one. And those who don't believe in themselves, it's possible. It's difficult, but it's possible. You just need a little bit of luck, hard work, and then experience will come.
Well, to give up that career, which would be obviously probably a more lucrative one than washing some kegs at a brewery, required a leap of faith. But obviously, shows you had some dedication and the ability to work and to learn and study and improve on that.
I think for most of people in the industry, at least in my case, that was a lifestyle. I was like 25 years old when I came to New Zealand, so I was surrounded by amazing people. And for me, this kind of career focus on the being part of the rat race and focus on the finance, that was never important. I was more focused on experience and having good time. And that's what I found in New Zealand, and I guess that's why I stay so long and until now.
Sure. So what is Mount Brewing known for when you joined the brewery, and how has that evolved over the last 10 years?
We've been very manual brewery. At that time, we've been known for a few beers that we've been mainly selling to the local pubs. We've been selling beers to the local liquor stores in basically Petainer bottles, in flagons. So the quality wasn't necessarily there in the long term. In the short term, the beers were pretty good, I would say, but we got the problem with expansion. That's for sure. We're going through a lot of changes in terms of quality, packaging. There's been a lot of changes throughout those years. From the manual brewery, not having canning line, selling on the domestic market just around our town, to basically where we are now, selling around the country, North Island, South Island, being exposed in the supermarkets, selling to many venues around the country, having our NPD program, and our team growing as well, of experienced brewers, sales team.
Sounds like a lot has happened in this last 10 years.
Oh, it's been a lot of changes, and I'm lucky to be part of those changes. It was bumpy journey, but definitely worth it, because where we are now, we are in a good position, I would say, with our beers, with our quality that improves a lot. Yeah, so we are happy where we are at the moment, but sky is the limit. We want to grow even more, and we are just thinking about the future, and we believe the future is bright.
Well, a lot of folks, recommended your Mountie New Zealand Pilsner to me. You've got to try that. When we were out here earlier this week, so we made our way to Free House where they had it on tap, and it's even on tap down here on the South Island at Free House. A rather important craft beer spot down here in Nelson, which is a vote of confidence in the quality of what you're doing. So I want to talk about that and talk about your approach to it, which I imagine has also evolved over a number of years. But before we do that, taste the modern flavors of indie hops at CBC this year in Indianapolis. Join Indie and Indie for 14 incredible collab beers to showcase Strata, Luminosa, Lorient, Audacia, Meridian, and more. Experience their newest hop, Audacia, in both a hazy IPA by Fidens and a West Coast IPA by Grains of Wrath Dive the depths of Strata and T90, CGX, and Hyperboost forms with IPAs by Craft Coast and Flatland Brewing. Refresh your palate with the crisp, summery flavors of Lorient and an Italian Pils by Maui Brewing and a French Pils by Upright Brewing. And bask in the liquid sunshine magic of Luminosa with IPAs from Fort George and Bearlick Brewing. Check out the full CBC lineup at www.indiehops.com and plan to stop by their booth, number 3122. They'll be as happy to see you as you'll be that you made the effort. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And are you a craft brewery looking to elevate your branding? Steel Chill Cups are the perfect promotional tool. Crafted from 100% recyclable steel and proudly made in the USA, these 16-ounce cups come in vibrant red, blue, green, and gray. Designed to keep beverages cold and frosty to the touch, they enhance the drinking experience at festivals, tastings, and tap rooms. Customizable branding options allow breweries to showcase logos and unique designs, boosting brand recognition. These stylish cups not only serve a practical purpose, but also become keepsakes for beer lovers. Discover how Steel Chill Cups can put your brand on every pour. Visit steelchillcups.com today. All right, Paweł, let's talk about New Zealand Pilsner.
Yep, that's a wide topic.
A wide topic. Why don't we start out by talking about the kind of style basics and the way that New Zealand brewers approach this? It is a defined style within your kind of competitive sphere. The way that and so for in competition categories, it's a pretty wide range for this. Well, talk about what that style is.
It's not like officially defined by BJCP, I believe. It's
Right.
still provisional
There's
style.
only one style, one New Zealand style
yeah.
with BJCP, New Zealand IPA right now.
But here in New Zealand is defined style for our national competition, which is Brewers Guild Award, and it's like defined style within our country, and we are competing here quite heavily. Can't tell you exact number of entries that we have every year, but there's like amazing Pilsners on the markets, that's for sure. And the style itself was defined by Emerson Brewing, Richard Emerson from Emerson Brewing in, I believe, 90s. And since then, style evolved quite a lot. I never got to know like what's exactly brewing process or recipes of that beer, but that's absolutely amazing beer. That was kind of example for other people to brew New Zealand Pilsner here in New Zealand for sure. And over the years, the style evolved. So I can only speak for myself how we brew in New Zealand in Mount Brewing, because it comes like over like many years of trials and making mistakes and finding what works for us. And taking examples from trying other beers, obviously. So other breweries and other beers were like inspiration for what we do in the Mount Brewing as well. That's for sure.
So, but in a broad sense, when we say broad, like I mentioned at the top, the style guidelines that you all have set out do allow for ale fermentation or lager fermentation?
I haven't heard for ale fermentation, but there's some rumors that New Zealand Pilsner can be fermented with a neutral ale yeast at the lower temperatures, because you still want to keep that Pilsner character without much esters, quite crisp, nice, clean flavor, like German Pilsner, I would say. It's a fine line between German and Czech Pilsner. There's differences because of obviously New Zealand hops have to shine through. That's the most important in this style. But the brewing process depends on the brewer, and vary from brewery to brewery. So some brewers are, from what I know, they're brewing at the cooler temperature, and then they have the acetyl rest. Some of them they're fermenting in a colder temperature using neutral yeast, to be specific, probably US 05, I would say, or California Ale, I would say. And then ramp up the temperature a little bit higher towards the acetyl rest. What we do in Mount Brewing is completely different again, because we found the sweet spot, what works for us. And
fantastic. Well, let's hold off on fermentation for now.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how you worked up a recipe for this beer. Because obviously the foundation of this is going to be malt and water. For those two things, as you started thinking about what a Mount New Zealand Pilsner was going to be, how did you start thinking about what that recipe for you all was going to have to reflect.
So basically, I break down like the description of what actually Pilsner is, like many years ago, when I started trying to find out what's the best of both worlds, like a hoppy Pilsners and German Pilsner, and breaks down and what would work with the New Zealand hops. So my way was of thinking to create a malty in this case New Zealand Pilsner was to make nice and crisp body, but not as crisp as German Pilsner, I would say. I wanted to add a little bit more mouthfeel, so our final gravity is a little bit higher than for traditional German Pilsner.
What do you normally end up?
For a malty, for a New Zealand Pilsner, we end up like 10-12, which is like a triplato, I would say. So it has reasonable residual sugars. So it's something like between probably like German Pilsner and Czech Pilsner in my approach. We start from 1051 gravity and finish with a 1012, aiming for a 45 IBUs. But to start like creating that recipe,
45 IBUs, that's good.
Yeah, going all. I have heavy hand and I like going the higher side.
That's why we enjoy that beer so much.
Yeah, and me like being here in New Zealand, I've been always fascinated with New Zealand hops and what they can provide to the beer, what they bring to the table. I've always been as a brewer on a heavy side from my early start in the brewing industry. So I just decided like our beer in my brewing has to be on that heavy side. So
it's music to Joe Stang's ears. He's a big proponent for higher IBU Pilsners. Even 45 might be a little low for him.
Yeah.
55, then now you're really talking. But
yeah. Oh, I've been trying go higher, but here like we found the balance what goes well with the malt base for us.
So speaking of that malt, a little bit more residual sugar in it, but not a lot.
Not a lot.
Just enough to, I assume, take some of the edge off of those bitter and sharper hop flavors later down the road. But is there a malt in particular that you really enjoy for this?
So what we use local company. We use blend of two Pilsner malt, German Pilsner, and then we add a touch of wheat malt. So that's
is this Gladstones or
no? It's Gladfield.
Gladfield.
Yeah. It's an amazing company. We use them for quite a few of our beers, and we are happy with the result. They give you like quite a little bit of like a sweet flavor, but without much maltiness. And we found out that goes well. We tried like different companies, different ratio of different Pilsner malts, and I found out like a sweet spot that works for us. But as I said, the recipe is not everything. Like also the whole brewing process is very important.
Or sort of that malt, give you, any additional, precursors for, other types of, thiol or sulfur production.
No. They don't do that kind of magic now. That's we leave it that for hops. That's for sure. And
certain Pilsner malts can kick off different or more sulfur than others, but it's not just the yeast.
Oh, we've been trying, like as I said, we've been using like a German Pilsner malt, even light lager, which is much lighter and more neutral in flavor. But it's been probably 20 different batches to dial in like what works for us.
Yeah.
And we use the ratio of I would say 40% Pilsner, those two different Pilsners, and then 45, and then around 10%, 7 to 10% of wheat malt. And that gives us like a amazing rounded body that complement that kind of level of bitterness and
good
late
foam
addition.
Too.
Yeah, and then a good level of late hop addition as well. We hopping our beer throughout 70 minutes boil, starting from first wort.
We got to talk about the mash before we get into that kind of stuff. Obviously you come from Poland. There's a lot of decoction, in that part of the world.
Yeah.
How do you, is there anything to the way that you mash on this? Now, obviously, for a lot of your history, you were on a more rudimentary system for brewing.
Yeah, what they've been saying here that we are lazy brewers a little bit. So we never tried decoction, the double decoction. Some people are doing double. We never tried this kind of stuff. We're doing like single infusion at 67 degrees. It's quite heavy on the calcium
67
sulfur.
Celsius, of course.
Celsius, yeah. And we are going like on the 2-to-1, basically like similar to our IPAs, like 2.5-to-1 calcium sulfur to calcium chloride as well. Not overly mineral water, but on the mid kind of levels, I would say, overall minerality of water. Single infusion, altogether for probably like 15 minutes infusion at 67 degrees. And then, I know, like, as a European brewer, I should take more inspiration from from European brewers, traditional style of brewers, like from Germany or from Czech. But I came here and I wanted to make a different way, like the other brewers here in New Zealand were doing, or in States and stuff like that. And we never had the like equipment to allow us to do decoction. So we stick to what we can do and adapt to the environment, to circumstances, basically.
There's never what you sometimes there's what you should do, but for every rule, there's someone doing it differently that shows that as long as you are thoughtful and strategic about the way that you do it, you don't have to follow the same dogma. And we've certainly in the United States seen plenty of lager brewers win, top medals making single infusion lagers. And
I've been trying different methods as much as our equipment allows us to do. So I did the step mash. I was experimenting with the different step temperatures, like starting from protein break and then raising to 64, then 67 degrees and mashing out and stuff. And I didn't see affecting much of the clarity of the beer in the final product. It didn't affect much of the sulfur component and any other flavors. So I just resign completely from step mashing and I go back to the roots. I was experimenting with the step mashing, not with the decoction, but with the step mashing for sure, and different breaks. But it seems like the simplest method is the best one for us. So
if you test it both ways and find a way that works the most efficient possible, then that's what more can you want?
Yeah, that was a lot of research and development and a lot of testing and making mistakes, failing many times, and until finding the sweet spot that works for us.
Sure. Yeah. So now let's talk about a little bit of your hot side process on this. And maybe we should now start talking about hops within the space of New Zealand Pilsner, because this is where things get really funky, or have the potential to get really funky, because you layer, but down the road, you're going to layer in sulfur from your fermentation on sulfur produced, by these hops. And sometimes riding that line can be a delicate balance. So, how do you start, first, how do you select hops? Because there are some kind of go-to hops now amongst brewers for New Zealand Pilsner.
Most brewers for the New Zealand Pilsners, they're using Nelson Sauvin, Motueka, Riwaka. That's the golden ratio, I think, golden triangle to goes for a New Zealand Pilsner. And I don't think so you can go wrong with those. You can use in a different ratio, obviously. For us, we have bittering addition. We start from Pacific Jade as a higher alpha acids hop, so it gives you nice rounded bitterness. We chuck it for a 70 minutes boil before even it started boiling, so we call it first wort, right? I found that bitterness is more rounded in a higher pH. And then we adding towards the end of the boil a 10 minutes addition, around 3 grams of hops per liter, equal part of Motueka and Riwaka. And then for a cold pull, we do the cold pull for our Pilsner. Most for our beers, actually, for IPAs, we do similar process. For our cold pour at 83 degrees, we still want to extract some bitterness from our process, from our recipe. We're adding around 5 to 6 grams of Nelson Sauvin, Riwaka, and Motueka. And then, we whirlpool for 10 minutes. Stand it for another 10 minutes.
This is quite an aromatic Pilsner then.
So it's very aromatic. You could experience probably over the last few days here. So it's quite punchy. But we wanted to focus on aroma, because for me, if you call somebody something New Zealand Pilsner, the New Zealand Pilsners have to shine through. Throughout designing that beer, I didn't think about that much balance. I just wanted to focus on the best extraction of New Zealand hops, and then I was dialing down a little bit towards the balance and stuff like that. But that was my initial approach. I focused more on the hops to pop. So
how does the Nelson Sauvin, Motueka, Riwaka that you select for or you use in the lager compare to the way you also think about some of those same varieties in more expressive, ale styles like, hazy IPA, for example, because we think about Nelson, and yes, you can use Nelson in lots of West Coast, clear IPA, but, it is mostly some of these hops, because they are so punchy and powerful, they tend to be layered into some of these more residually sweet hazy IPAs more than they are in some of the leaner IPAs. So, does that impact the way that you choose where you source some of these from or select them?
Oh yeah, for sure. For our Motueka, that is main hop in our New Zealand Pilsner, we select Motueka that is more classic. We tried.
What does classic mean?
Classic Motueka for me is mojito. Mojito aroma, crush lime, limey, zesty kind of flavor and aroma. So that's what I'm focusing on selecting hops. That's what I've been doing here for the last few days, focusing to find these hops. So that's our base hop. We use 50% of the whole total.
Is there a place you really like to get them from?
Oh, we're getting them from New Zealand Hops. They gave us 5 different lots, and I think I selected a pretty good one that goes well for our New Zealand Pilsner. For our other beers, we use Motueka as a supporting hops, not as a main one. In New Zealand Pilsner, is the main hop. For our hazies, is supporting hops for some other bigger ones. So we're doing a little bit opposite things to a New Zealand Pilsner versus IPA, I would say.
If you're choosing the Motueka for an IPA, less classic, is there something else you look for in it?
Oh, some like the lots that we had on the table, they were like actually surprisingly quite tropical as well, like towards like a passion fruit. Some of them, they had green bell pepper kind of notes. Some of them, they're like more towards like a zesty kind of, but without that minty dimension. So yeah, there are quite different Motueka, surprisingly different Motueka coming from this harvest. So everybody, I guess that's why people like brewers from around the world coming here to select what works for them. Selecting Motueka, I was focusing what works the best for that particular beer. Not thinking much about IPAs and hazies or West Coast and stuff, because we use Motueka. If we use it as a supporting hops, not as a main singer. For those beers like hazy IPA or West Coast IPA, focusing on New Zealand hops, we use a much more heavier amount of Nectaron and Nelson Sav, and then Motueka and Riwaka as supporting hops. While in New Zealand Pilsner, we focus to build the beer around Motueka, and then we use Nelson Sav and Riwaka, which are like super powerful hops in my opinion, as a supporting hops. Because in my opinion, it's very easy to overpower other hops with Riwaka in particular. It's quite punchy hop. Nelson Sav as well.
Yeah, that the story of Riwaka has been one that we've heard a number of times on the farm. Such an interesting hop that is tough agronomically, doesn't grow the same way as a lot of other hops. Can also look kind of funky on the vine, and produces a very low yield and needs to be priced accordingly, but also packs an incredible punch and is not a one-to-one replacement.
It's not. And it has huge potential, I think, in all styles. So like New Zealand Pilsners, we use Riwaka for our IPAs, and we have amazing results, but everything like depends how you use it. It's beautiful hop to work with. It's not the easiest one. It's really easy to overdose.
What are your secrets of it with New Zealand Pilsner? And is there some character that you look for in Riwaka when you are using it in a lager space?
Yeah, so in Riwaka, I'm looking for that kind of diesel notes along with the top notes of passion fruit as well. But again, I don't want to overly overpower, so I'm looking for a balance between Motueka, Riwaka, and Nelson Sav. And especially, we select only one lot of each of those hops. I need to take in account that they have to go together well, and what's the perfect ratio, to go. So I was like choosing like Motueka, Riwaka based on like Mountie, on that New Zealand Pilsner, but Nelson Sav, I was focusing on IPA and stuff, which was like, if I overdose Nelson Sav, if I use like a too high quantity of Nelson Sav along with Motueka, then, they will be out of balance and out of kind of shape, I would say, for that particular beer. So what I was expecting in the New Zealand Pilsner, in our New Zealand Pilsner, was to have like nice limey, zesty, citrusy flavor with a touch of dankness from Riwaka, but not overly punchy like you can find it in some very heavy hazies. And then some notes of gooseberries and white wine from Nelson Sauvin. And I think by blending carefully those three hops together, especially on the whirlpool side and cold side for a dry hopping, I think we've got like a good results. Yeah.
What is the general percentage of each of those hops?
So 60% is Motueka for a dry hopping, 20% of Riwaka, and 20% of Nelson Sauvin. Yeah. And then the similar ratio for a cold pour at 83 degrees. And as I said, we use Riwaka and Motueka for a 10 minutes edition just for a flavor and give some like a little bit extra oils. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
interesting.
Because overall we're using altogether there will be like 16 grams of hops per liter in that beer. 16 to 18 depends. Yeah, on the yielding on the brew day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I believe
not afraid of hops in this.
No. So we are not playing around. And as I said, we are pretty heavy. Not only me, but other brewers. We are pretty heavy on the hops because we love working with them, and especially after this special time of the year, after like we select the hops, we can't wait to get those pallets in our brewery and start using them again. Because again, this selection was different than the last year. So that will be quite interesting what those hops brings to the table and how our beers change overall.
Fascinating. I want to talk about more about that because yes, last year was a big drought year, and which produced interesting hops. Actually, the plant stress actually does often have some beneficial stuff. But this year, even rained here during earlier this week while we were here looking at selection and harvest. Anyway, I would be curious to get your perspective, having just rubbed these, what some of those dynamic differences might be. But first, breweries don't just need a point of sale system; they need a one-stop shop operating system. That's where Arrived comes in. Not only does Arrived offer a world-class POS built specifically for breweries, but they also provide Arrived brewery management, e-commerce, and more to help breweries scale and thrive. From taproom to distribution, Arrived gives breweries the tools to streamline operations and boost profits, all in one powerful platform. Want to see the latest innovations in action? Visit Arrived at CBC 2025, booth 1865, where they'll be pouring beers and showing off the future of brewery tech. Or visit arrived.com, ARRYVED.com, to learn more. Also, attention all brewers, beverage makers, and industry pros. If you're at this year's CBC 2025 in Indianapolis, there's one place you must check out: ProBrew at booth 2801. Booth 2801 is where innovation meets refreshment. Come experience stunning animations of ProBrew's cutting-edge beverage processing and packaging equipment in action, including the powerful ProFill rotary can filler and seamer and ProCarb carbonation and nitrogenation system. After experiencing their top-tier tech, why not grab a beer at their pouring station and bar? See ProBrew solutions in actions, chat with their experts, and enjoy a perfectly poured beverage on them. So don't miss it. ProBrew booth 2801. ProBrew, brew your beer. Also, if you're launching a brewery or acquiring an existing one, consider our brewery workshop and new brewery accelerator September 14th through 17th in Fort Collins, Colorado. Over 4 days, we engage in panel discussions, technical brewery tours, networking, and small working group sessions that help you better understand and prepare for the challenges of brewery operation. Tickets are on sale now. Visit breweryworkshop.com for more information and to secure your spot. Obviously, that is one of my event babies, and I help moderate panels, lead, and I have one-on-one sessions and all that other stuff, so you can pick my brain if you come to the brewery workshop. All right, Paweł, let's talk about the crop year differences. You've just been rubbing and selecting hops over the last couple of days here in Nelson and the greater Nelson surrounds. What was the difference, year over year that you pulled out of this year's crop?
So we've been selecting hops in the last 2 years, and I found it quite fascinating how hops evolve within those two years. Last year, I feel Motueka was a little bit inconsistent, in my opinion. We had yeah, we've got like no big problem with the selection, but it was much more difficult to select Motueka last year for me. This year was basically like pretty high level of Motueka, while then that was quite interesting to look at the Riwaka, and there was more problem with the Riwaka. Which wasn't a problem last year. We were like, we found what we are looking for, like going through from farm to farm, and we've been surprised that each of them is like has amazing Riwaka, which this year I think, from what I was talking to the people, that was a little bit different. Nelson Sav last year was way more punchy from what I was rubbing and what I smell in pallets and cones. It was like more spectrum of flavors, I think, last year. This year, at least what I was rubbing and selected, the samples that I had was more towards like a classic Nelson Sav hops. Think about gooseberry, white wine notes, passion fruit, lemon, and this kind of stuff. Like last year, in particular, our Nelson Sav that we selected was like out of range. It was like very like herbal, rosemary, lemon thyme, marjoram, and stuff like this. This year I couldn't find this kind of example, and I decided to go towards the classic one. What else? Nectaron. This year Nectaron was very easy to pick for me. We had like absolutely amazing examples of that hop. I didn't have problem to find what I was looking for, like sweet mango, passion fruit, multivitamin kind of juice. I was very happy with the quality of those hops. Tahiki, which is New Zealand Cascade. I was looking for a classic one. Last year I didn't select that hop, but this year we had enough quantity to select that hop, and I was looking for a pink grapefruit, piney, a touch of woody notes, and I found it what I was looking for. So yes, completely different crops. I remember that last year, like I went towards like some kind of crazy descriptors of those classic, I mean, we call it classic hops. This year I went towards like a classic descriptor of those, what I'm calling like, our classic hops.
Was that just because the quality of the certain, that character was a little bit better this year versus last? Or
I think it was more thoughtful selection this year. Last year I was like wanted to go all in for like a whole spectrum, broad spectrum of aromas in those selected hops. This year with the more experience, especially after using previous year harvest for a whole year, I had the chance to actually understand those hops and how they go with our beers. So for this one, I focus on a little bit different ones. In particular, how we use those hops for our core range beers, and what we'll be using and how we'll be using those hops for our seasonals. So thinking about Motueka and Nelson Sav, I was looking for a classic descriptor, as I mentioned. The same with Tahiki and with the Nectaron, because with Nectaron we're using heavily on our IPAs and hazies. Then I could go a little bit broader spectrum of aromas. I think like it comes with the experience. Like definitely hop harvest teaches you quite a lot, and you can learn what you actually want to achieve in your beers. So doing that 2 years in a row opened my eyes of like how to brew the beer using like different hops. Sure.
Well, let's go back to the lager fermentation now for New Zealand Pilsner after this little sideline into selecting hops this season. Talk to me about your approach to fermentation.
Yeah. So we've been talking before earlier today that you can possibly some brewers like fermenting, doing the New Zealand Pilsners using ale yeast or lager yeast. In our brewery, my approach is to ferment higher. I've been working closely with yeast company with Scott from Lallemand. He gave me a few advices about different.
Scott from Lallemand.
Yeah, that's famous Scott. Yes,
I met Scott last night at the Motueka Inn.
Yeah, great guy.
And he's a podcast listener also. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
As I said, I try to work closely with suppliers, and we have good relationship here. And he was very helpful, like helping with the fermentation profile and give me some knowledge and insights of different fermentation profiles. We've been talking about fermentation, how to utilize yeast in the best way and to let the hops shine through, because that's the main goal of New Zealand Pilsner in my approach, to let the hops shine through, and how we can achieve that through good fermentation and avoid any like flavor and aroma loss, like in traditional Pilsners where you lager for 6 weeks and whatnot. So in our New Zealand Pilsner, we actually ferment with the lager yeast, but at warmer temperatures. We do.
How warm?
We ferment at 17 degrees. We pitch actually after we transferring a little bit faster as well. We transfer at 22 degrees and cooling with the glycol with the jacket on the fermenter, and then we're pitching yeast at 17 degrees. We let them to grow over 24 hours. So yeah, that's how the fermentation like basically kicks. So we don't have like any problem with the lag phase. We encourage like very healthy fermentation, avoiding lag phase and microbiological contamination, any dangerous and stuff like that. And then after 24 hours, we drop temperature to 12 degrees again. Not again, we drop temperature to 12 degrees to encourage like a slow fermentation. So kind of we subdue production of esters and phenols and all of undesired kind of fermentation compounds. And after 24 hours, we raise the temperature to 17 degrees again. So, and we leave it until the fermentation is complete. So it works fine for us. It's like against your intuition, kind of like how you should ferment lagers. But that method, I've been trying many different fermentation profiles, and turns out that this fermentation profile works best for us. So by raising temperature from 12 degrees to 17 degrees, we encourage nice and healthy fermentation. Yeast strain is quite healthy and neutral, so we don't produce much of the esters. And fermentation is very healthy, no problem with diacetyl because temperature naturally raised to 17 degrees. And we can complete basically fermentation within 10 days, I would say. We leave in the final terminate gravity for another 2 days to make sure that, yeast do the cleaning job of any residual off flavors and stuff like this that might stay after fermentation. And then after that, we do the VDK test, so we check on any diacetyl because that's the, I think,
sure,
key approach here that you should avoid.
Especially you're dry hopping here too. So
exactly, and then so we do the VDK test, and if
you ever see hop creep in these? Or?
No, and thanks God, touch the wood, it's not gonna happen. So then we drop the temperature to 12 degrees again. So it's like a lot of playing around, 12 degrees, 17 degrees, but. After fermentation is complete, we ensure that we have terminal gravity reached at least for the 2 days in a row. We check pH. We're aiming for a pH to finish at like 4.2, 4.3. That's super important for us because with the higher pH, we found it like it's the beer is a little bit like I would say like a soapy, and it's a little bit like how to call it? Like too malty. It's not bright and shiny, shiny enough. So we found it that with the hoppy lagers or pilsners, lower pH showcases the hops much better, and the beer is like just much more brighter and shiny in terms of like hoppiness and stuff. So we drop the temperature to 12 degrees. We keep it for 2 days, and then we start dropping yeast. So we drop the yeast for another 2 days. And then, and the tank should be reasonable, free of yeast. And then we chuck some hops for a dry hopping. So we dry hop at the level of 6 to 7 grams of hops per liter, the same blend of Motueka, Riwaka, and Nelson Sav, which is 60% 20-20. So when we dry hopping, we bubble our fermenters. We have like a racking arm, and then we bubble our fermenter for 20 minutes at 10 to 15 psi to encourage like contact hops with the beer for like long enough and good infusion. And after that, we let them rest. We close the valves basically, we leave that for another 24 hours. And after 24 hours, We bubble again to make sure that we have like a good utilization. We leave those hops up again. We bubble through the racking arm, this time while spinning the racking arm. We leave all those hops up, and what we believe is like good extraction of those essential hop oils they're very important in the hops and gives you those beautiful aromas from New Zealand hops. And after that, we do another VDK test to make sure, that we don't have any problems with the hop creeping. That was like a big topic here during the panels and stuff like that. And if we are happy with that, with the aroma intensity and no problem with any off flavors, we start cold crushing under the pressure. Again, the valves are closed, and we basically cold crushing under the pressure of 20 psi. And then again we start dumping. So we want to avoid those kind of grassy notes, like vegetable notes like you might have from such a heavy dry hops. So we just want to extract basically those kind of beautiful essential lupulin oils from the hops, and to let them shine through, but avoid any other like off flavors associated with extension dry hopping or something like that. After the beer is cold crush, we cold crush to 1 degree straight away. We don't play with the step cold crushing in the hoppy beers. We didn't find much difference of that, so we cold crush to 1 degree, and then from the next day we start like dumping the hops that they did the job. And the beauty of that fermentation profile is it allows you to shorten the lagering phase. So we lager for like maybe 10 to 12 days. And then after that, beer is ready, and we filtering. And
right, given the hop character that you have in here, extended lagering would work against some of the brightness that you need out of that.
That would work against that, probably that kind of brightness of hops, that punchy.
I'm surprised you even leave it for 12 days at that point.
That's the maximum what we do.
Right.
We were trying like different methods. Like at the beginning, I was even lagering that for like 3 weeks. Okay, the hop aroma start already going away, and then we shortened that time to 7 days. That was a little bit too short. The beer came out a little bit too green, and then we found the sweet spot between 10 to 14 days. As long as the beer coming out clear, we are happy to go ahead and start filtering. That's beauty.
Sure. And then, are there any techniques that you use to make sure that as you then package that beer, that it doesn't lose that kind of brightness over time? Because, obviously that's the biggest danger for that kind of beer.
So we use the biofine for our beers to make sure that and then we filter beer through 8 and 3 microns, just to ensure that the beer comes out clear. And then because we maintain the high pressure in the tank, so those volatile hop compounds, they don't go away anywhere, so they stay in the tank basically. And what we do believe, we've been trying different methods of keeping those hops aroma trapped into the beer, that the trapping them under the higher pressure actually works well to actually push them back to the beer and dissolve them in the beer, and to maintain them in the final product. That goes well for us. We filter beer to our dry beer tanks. We don't do any adjustment with the hop oils and stuff like that. That was another topic some brewers might be doing, but we found it like the aroma of that method is pretty intense, so we don't do any other step. We like our pilsners to be pretty highly carbonated, so we carbonate to 2.8 volumes. And that goes very well with that kind of crispy, nice body and high carbonation, and that silky kind of aroma, silky hop oil going down your throat. So it's a good combination of everything, I think.
So romantic. And
I'm already thirsty, so I start thinking about that, what I was feeling for the last few days drinking Mouty, and it was pretty good. Yeah.
Well, I should also say that the experience of drinking it is still feels Pilsnerish. It's as intense as some of these hops are. It doesn't there's still some core nature of Pilsner style to it with these modern hops, in the same way that a very good West Coast Pilsner doesn't just, fully dive into, pale ale kind of category. Like, having some of that structure, and you find that structure not just through sulfur components from the fermentation, but also some of those sulfur components from the hops. And it actually works, I think, in some way to help produce that structure that a Pilsner needs.
Tak. All of those what the components that you mentioned goes quite well. We don't have much of the sulfur from that active fermentation. They come basically from mainly from hops.
From the hops.
And they create somehow the beautiful structure. We don't have that kind of eggy, sulfury notes that sometimes a bad fermentation gives you. But hops somehow manage to give you that kind of different sulfur compounds that goes well with the beer. And it's clear you can say that's New Zealand Pilsner. For me, it's a big difference between West Coast Pilsner, what we brew here in New Zealand, and New Zealand Pilsner. New Zealand Pilsner still have to have some body. And while West Coast Pilsner, we brew it a couple of times, we had amazing results, but it's much more drier and even more bitter. So you're losing kind of roundness that New Zealand Pilsner has, I would say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're not the same.
No, completely not the same. They are two different beers. For our West Coast Pilsners, what we were doing, we try to aim less than two Plato final gravity, so it's much more drier, and we tend to go up to 70 IBUs. So it's big difference in those parameters as well. And
up to 70 IBUs in a West Coast Pilsner.
Yeah.
Damn it, that sounds amazing.
Yes.
Now I'm getting thirsty.
Yeah. Do
you make a quote unquote West Coast Pilsner with American hops or with New Zealand hops?
Both. It's not our core range. We're doing them as our seasonals, and actually next month it will be fun to brew American West Coast Pilsner using HBC 1134. We put our hands on some experimental hops from United States, and I want the hops to shine through, and probably I want to brew it as West Coast Pilsner using New Zealand methods as I just described, but using American hops. And so there will be quite heavily hopped American Pilsner, I believe.
Interesting. Are there any other hoppy lager variations that you've been playing around with?
Not really. It's the kind of thing in New Zealand as well. In our facility, in our restaurant, in our brew pub, we organize Lagerfest. So it's like a festival once a year, challenge once a year that we organize in January. So it's the perfect month for a lager pilsners or whatnot. And so we're around 20 brewers can bring different kind of lagers to the table. So some of them, they bring in hoppy pilsner, hoppy lager. That's what they call it. West Coast lager even, which is kind of new style to me, but that's the brewer's interpretation. Cold IPA, so it's quite interesting time of the year. In terms of hoppy lager, it's basically in my interpretation that would be like international lager, but a little bit heavier on the hop side, but not too much. That's not Pilsner. That's not New Zealand Pilsner. It would be New Zealand lager.
Sure. Well, in addition to obviously making fantastic New Zealand Pilsner and other hoppy lager, you won a medal at the most recent New Zealand Beer Awards in the dark beer category and stouts. So you've got a wide range there. And I don't think we're going to have time to talk about that, but I do want to pick your brain about IPA hops, New Zealand IPA hops, before we close out here, because I really love listening to your descriptive lexicon for these, the way that you think about these flavors and the range of these flavors, because I think that's one of the hardest things for brewers, on the other side of the ocean, in whatever direction, to truly wrap their heads around the breadth of these things, because generally what then ends up out there in the kind of scope of selection, in those various places or even on the spot markets, is a little bit narrower. It's safer, to keep it in a more classic, quote unquote, classic range. And when you're in any place, you get to experience some of the bigger kind of range that can possibly be. So when you think about, say, brewing a hazy IPA, talk to me about some of the most interesting hot New Zealand hops that you found for making those interesting, engaging varieties of hazy IPA.
Oh, when it comes to hazy IPA, like I'm a huge fan of using New Zealand hops in any of our hazies. In particular, I'm going quite heavy on Nectaron and Nelson Sav. They have huge properties in the big hazies, in the big double IPAs as well, and IPAs and West Coast IPAs, especially in Nelson Sav. But in the recent years, since Nectaron pop up on the market, it's a beautiful hop to use in the hazies, and in some of our hazies is dominant hop. We use up to 70%, and then American hops are complementary hops. I'm a huge fan from the beginning of New Zealand hops. So from my first day in New Zealand, I've been trying to absorb a lot of knowledge and a lot of those flavors from New Zealand breweries and knowledge flavors. And so I was drinking a lot of New Zealand beers, and I fall in love with them. So I decided that me as a brewer, I want to express of those New Zealand hops as well. Don't find me wrong, I'm using American hops as well. I'm a big fan of them, but I feel like New Zealand hops have a lot to offer as well. And it's not about competition, it's about my preferences. So for a hazy...
Well, especially if you're making hazy IPAs, we saw data that Laura Burns from Omega Yeast shared. It's kind of fascinating to see just how much more haze potential some of these New Zealand hops have compared to some of their American counterparts.
Yeah. Like on those presentation that we've been going through in the last couple of days, that was quite interesting, and that's true actually. We found out that our hazy IPAs brew on the New Zealand hops, where the New Zealand hops are dominant. Then the haziness is much more stable and thicker. I would say the appearance is like way thicker than like just using American hops and stuff like that. And also on those presentations, we could see the Nelson Sav is like higher on the tiles as well. So I don't know, like I was doing that before, and so nice to see it on the presentation actually, that they they're potential super potent hops in the hazies. So I love using New Zealand Nelson Sav in hazes along with the Nectaron. For other beers where we're using other New Zealand hops like Motueka or Riwaka, they're like, I use them as supporting hops. That's our approach. I heard about some brewers that they're using Motueka as the base hop for the hazies, but for us, I like to have like a very oily, punchy, all combination of hops, and I found it that Nectaron, Nelson Sav in particular, they had like the broader spectrum of those desired aromas and flavors that I'm looking for in a hazy beers. So other things that we do in our hazies, I'm a big fan of using just 3 hops. So I always combine 3 hops, no 4, no 5. And I try to build around golden ratio. 50%, 25, 25, let's say, or something like that. But basically in all of our beers, we drop some New Zealand hops. They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful.
Fantastic. Well, as we close up here, what are you most excited about, as a brewing challenge over this next coming year? What really, you enjoy iterating, you enjoy problem solving. What are you most excited about over this next year?
Oh, and definitely how us as a brewery, I'm excited how we can improve the beer and what's going to be, next Nelson Sav, what's going to be in the next Nectaron. So there's a lot of research going on, and it's been absolutely pleasure to put the hands on some experimental hops in New Zealand. We've been brewing quite heavily lately using experimental hops, and it's quite interesting where those growing program going to developing, because New Zealand hops and the whole breeding program has a lot to offer. So I'm looking for a future. What's gonna be next? I don't know what you would call it in the United States, Citra, Mosaic, or something like that. Here in New Zealand, what would be next? Nectaron, Superdelic, or Nelson Sav. So definitely, it's a lot of going on the New Zealand market. A lot of growers pushing the boundaries and trying to grow their own hops. I'm definitely excited about what those guys bring to the table and how we as brewers can utilize those hops to the maximum. That's for sure is exciting, and I think that's why you have so many brewers from around the world being curious about the same as well. wanting to be first to use those hops, put the hands on those experimental varieties and stuff like this that they don't even have official name, they're coded. So it's exciting times for sure. And here in New Zealand, we are very privileged to have that access, early access to those hops and brew with them, and then try firsthand those beers, delicious beers on New Zealand hops.
I love watching both of these avenues. That first one of trying to create the next big, great hop, but also trying to understand how to optimize when to pick, trying to understand the environmental factors that impact the way that some of these hops develop, soil, et cetera. And so over time, we're seeing more and more research being done, more energy being put into understanding the differences here. And so that kind of visibility into these factors affecting the way that these hops grow and the way they express flavors and aromas is just the most fascinating thing. We are getting more data than we've ever had now about some of these things, and the growers are able to make better decisions and all of that. And that translates into better flavor and aroma.
And that's what we all want. And we want to also find what works best for both of us, for hop growers, producers, and brewers as well. Agronomy, yielding, and all of those flavor and aroma properties that they're important to the brewers. That not necessarily goes along well with for the hop growers. Like we were talking about Riwaka, it's amazing hop that brewers love, but doesn't give much yielding for the growers. So they have to increase the price. Then brewers are not happy. So it's difficult to find the balance, but we're definitely getting there, and that's why those research breeding programs are so exciting to find the sweet spot, I guess, in the future.
Fantastic. Well, that's a good place to bring it to a close with G&D Chiller's 24/7 service and support. Your brewery will never stop. Berkeley yeast bioengineers ordinary strains to make them extraordinary. Try Old Orchard's latest additions, including fruit punch, guava, kiwi, and pomegranate. Taste the modern flavors of indie hops in 14 different beers poured at their CBC booth, 3122. Discover how Steel Chill Cups can put your brand on every pour at steelchillcups.com. Arrived as your one-stop brewery operating system. Visit ProBrew at booth 2801 and see where innovation meets refreshment. And the Brewery Workshop will help prepare you for the challenges of brewery operation. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button. Please become a subscriber and support us here at Craft Beer and Brewing so we can continue to bring great conversations like this one to you week after week. And then, of course, great content, recipes, perspectives from brewers all over the world in every issue of our magazines. Paweł, if people want to learn more about what you do at Mount Brewing, where do they find you?
They can find us in Mount Maunganui, close to Tauranga, in a Bay of Plenty, and a beautiful coastal beach town. So if you guys looking for surf spot where you can find great craft beer, that's the place. We call it Paradise. So there we are located.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks for talking to me about New Zealand Pilsner. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you and learning more about the beers you make.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. That was absolutely a pleasure. And thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.